Fatou Niang, welcome. Thank you for being here. We consider you a woman leader here in New Canaan, and we are celebrating the legacy of the 19th Amendment. So I think you fall into the category of the women in New Canaan that are great leaders of the community, and we want to talk to you a little bit about some of the experiences that you've had since you've been in New Canaan. Tell us a little bit, before we talk about New Canaan, about your early life, your background, where you came from.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm originally from France with African descent. My family is originally from West Africa, Ivory Coast, and Mali. And we moved to the US in '96. My husband and I were both French. And back then we did not have kids, so it was fantastic being in New York City. But after 2 boys in the city, we decided to move to New Canaan.
Well, before we get to the New Canaan stories, I want to hear more about your time in France. As I understand it, you have a bachelor's degree in advertising and communications, and you worked at the Disney Paris. Tell us about that.
That was a very fun experience. I mean, I started working at Disney when there was no Disneyland Paris. It was just fields. And they were still negotiating.
It was just an idea.
It was just, well, it was more than an idea because they were negotiating with the French government on infrastructure that was going to be built around the park. And it was not an easy fight because in France we have a park called Astérix, which is the history of France, of Gaul. And they felt like they weren't being supported by the government, but then Mickey came and they were throwing red carpet for Mickey, so it was a long battle. And so the first few years when we were talking to journalists about what the castle was going to be looking like, or Cinderella was going to be here, they really had to have great imagination to
Wow,
to
that sounds
envision
exciting.
it. Yeah.
And how did you meet your husband?
Oh, that's my version is that we met in the subway in Paris.
Is that right?
Yep.
That sounds very romantic.
It was very romantic. I told him that he did follow me, but his version is he did not follow me in his version. I was coming back from work, from Disney after a long day, and I was going to a friend's house, and I was reading a book, and then my title, I heard a voice saying, "Oh, are you in marketing?" Because the title of the book was marketing.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
of
great.
course, I was going to go, marketing, what was your clue?
That's a great story. Now, you talk about family in Africa. Do you still have family there?
Yes. I still have family, mainly in Ivory Coast now. Still in Mali, but that I don't know so well.
Do you go back to visit, or do they come visit you?
Sadly, I haven't had the opportunity to go, and I wish at some point I will be able to take my kids and go discover that side of the family. But my mom now retired in the Ivory Coast, so she comes to visit us because we are 4 in the US and 2 still in France.
That's great. Now, you came to the United States with your husband.
Because of my husband.
And what was his role, and what brought you to the United
His
States?
work.
Okay.
His work. So we had to. He was hired from Arthur Anderson to PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Oh, yeah.
So we ended up moving from France and I had to leave Disney at that time to come to the US.
How did you like living in New York City?
It was a great experience. I think when you're single when you don't have kids in New York City, I was still single, we weren't married yet. You come to New York, it's New York City. And it's amazing.
When you, like the song says, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. I think that's so true, and you get such a great experience there.
Yeah.
Now, I understand you decided to move out to the suburbs, and you were almost going to live in Old Greenwich.
Yes.
What happened?
The vibe in New Canaan. We love the water in Old Greenwich, but we had friends in New Canaan that now lived in Florida, but they invited us to stay for the weekend so we can go visit our house in Greenwich, and that same weekend we decided to switch.
That's so great.
There was a community feel. Everybody was on Elm Street at that time. Baskin Robbins was still on Elm Street.
Sure.
Pinocchio was still on Elm Street, and everybody was out. It was a gorgeous summer day, and people were reaching out to us. Oh, are you in town? Are you new? And we felt like, wow, coming out of the city, that's what you want. You want to have a community around you. And we didn't feel that so much in Old Greenwich. So New Canaan was it.
And how long have you lived here?
Since 2004. So 18, 19 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're very involved in the community, and one of the highlights of your community involvement was your time at the Carver Center. Tell us a little bit about that, and what is the Carver Center?
The Carver Center is a Norwalk-based organization geared toward African American and minorities kids. They develop all kind of after-school program to keep the kids out of the street, basically, and keep them engaged, help them with their schoolwork, grades. For some, it's about learning how to be a public speaker. From others, it's about, hey, I'm aspiring to go to this college, but I don't know how to go about it.
You recently led an incredible peaceful protest here in New Canaan. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, with everything that is going on in the country right now, I felt like, and I said my family and I, we felt like we had been on the sideline for too long. And with George Floyd murder, because that's what it is, it was very hard to not say anything at that time. But police brutality is not an issue in New Canaan, but racism, systemic biases is. So it was, we wanted to do something, but we didn't want anger or because anger only takes away from the communication. But we just wanted people to be involved and realize that it's not because we don't have enough diversity in town that we shouldn't care for the issue. And for my kids, growing up in New Canaan has been a blessing, but it also had its side that is less talked about. And some of it I did not even know because my kid never even opened up. But with George Floyd passing, all of a sudden they start having that conversation with me. And at that evening, we decided, you know what, we have to do something about it. And I was very, very much pleased to see the involvement of the town, the reaction.
The police department was a great
partner. The
partner.
police department was excellent at helping us, and I didn't have to reach out to them, and they were really helpful. And thank God it all worked out fine, because it was in the midst of the beginning of the COVID, and the fear was, do I stand for what I believe, knowing that I might put people's life at risk, or do we all get over our fear and then do it? And thank God on the town call, when they said there was no extra new cases, that was reassuring, and God blessing. So,
how many people were there?
According to police, I think at least 2,000 people.
Fantastic.
So that, for me, it's so nicely surprising, because New Canaan is known as a Republican town. The politics of America is a little bit difficult right now, so we weren't expecting to have so many people show up, especially online. I think 500 has signed up.
No kidding.
Which already for me was amazing. So when I got to the middle school and I saw people kept pouring in, we were overwhelmed with it, but the positive way of being overwhelmed.
Yeah,
so
it was wonderful.
It was
and
amazing.
Your leadership is very inspiring to many people.
Thank you. My son did a fantastic job also.
Yes, I want to talk about him, but not quite yet. I do know that you wear another hat in town. You're a realtor.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what's going on in the real estate market in New Canaan right now.
It's fantastic.
Especially compared to last year, right?
Compared to last year, overnight we went from a buyer's market to a seller's market. New Canaan, Connecticut in general was slow to recover and come back to where it was. And to all of a sudden, we had a lot of big houses in town, a lot of acreage, and we couldn't give them away a year ago.
Everybody wanted to live in town.
Everybody wanted to be
in town.
And
now it's the opposite.
Smaller, no low maintenance, I don't want a pool.
Yeah.
Now it's the total opposite.
I know.
You have a property with a pool, multiple beds, and it just goes. I think there's a fear of buying also, because New Yorkers don't want to be stuck in New York City, if ever, and please God, I hope not. We have a second wave of COVID, and we need to anchor down again. That's also what triggers.
Is that where most of your clients are coming from, is the city?
Yes. Before the wave of COVID, most clients were coming from Norwalk or Stamford, because being in a buyer's market, prices had to adjust, and finally they could have access to New Canaan public schools.
You wear another hat in town, and you're talking about New Canaan to a lot of potential people to move here. How do you sell New Canaan? What's your favorite part about New Canaan?
My main argument for most of my clients is the community feel. And I used to live in Brooklyn when we moved from France to the U.S. So I went from a very diverse community to a not so diverse color-wise, but the community in New Canaan is so diverse origin-wise. So many people are coming from different part of the country or from abroad. The international group in town is very strong. So it gives a different flavor to the town.
I don't think a lot of people know about that.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. When I decided to move to New Canaan, my Brooklyn friend had a joke for me saying, "Do you know you're not blonde, right?"
That's awesome.
And I said, "Well, maybe not yet."
Right, exactly.
But once you get into the community, you realize that there is so much more than you can see or assume about the town. And that's my major selling point. And
a real international flavor.
Very international flavor. People from different backgrounds, different part of the U.S. So it makes people more open. Mm-hmm. When you are new into a community and you don't have your group of friends,
right,
you are willing to go out and look for friends and be involved with other things. I went through the same journey, coming in as a minority, as a black woman, but I don't see myself as a black woman. I see myself as a woman who happened to be black and who moved to New Canaan. So I did the same thing. I jump in and get to know my community by being involved, because I think that's the only way you get to know the essence of a place.
Tell me a little bit about the culture difference from France to the United States and how it affected women. It's different, isn't it?
Very much so. Very much so. And that was more of a cultural shock, especially coming from France to New York. Not on the big city aspect, because Paris is big city, international and all that. But in France, even though now we have caught up with it, like on the news, I would not see, our format is simple. It's one person that delivers the news. There's no team and all that. And that one person was always a white person. Mm-hmm. So to get to the US and have the format of having 3-4 people, and where they try to have representation of different ethnicity was very much a nice surprise. And but the other the other point of that was that racism is universal, but the level on which you feel it in the US, it's stronger than I would ever have thought of when I moved in, thinking of the US as the land of opportunity where everybody kind of can achieve their dream. So that was a real awakening to realize that it's the big differences. In France, we do have racism, but our laws are not. Mm-hmm. Where in the US, you have a lot of systemic laws that are preventing minority to achieve, or there are laws to help them achieve, but there are a lot of roadblocks for minorities, and that was the realization when I moved to the US.
I want to talk a little bit about how you balance everything. Mm-hmm. You're a mom, full-time mother. You've got a lot of different roles in the community, in work. How do you balance it all?
That's the power of being a woman.
Oh, I love that answer. Tell me more.
We are very good at juggling different hats, and most of my New Canaan friends are moms that have been juggling kids' activities left and right. Some has put their career on pause to focus on the family. Some are still doing with both. So I think it's just, as they say, give a busy person work to do, then you know it will be done, right?
I totally agree.
So I think that's what it is. If you don't have the choice and you have to get it done, you will make it happen.
That's so great.
I just go and don't think about it.
Well, we're here today because we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, mm-hmm. giving the women the right to vote. Mm-hmm. When you moved to the United States, you became a United States citizen, and when was the first time you voted?
The second election of Barack Obama was my first time I was allowed to vote.
Okay.
Since before that I was on a green card, mm-hmm. and so I made sure I was a citizen before that election, because to be part of that history was just tremendous and important to me. And since then I had been staying aware of what is happening politically around me. Because before that, you felt like, oh, I don't have the right. I can vote for the municipals, but that's it. I cannot. So it was a very superficial knowledge of the law, of who were my representative and what was the politics and which parties stand for. So, and then at that moment, it became very important to be engaged and go beyond the superficial.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I want to talk a little bit about your family.
Mm-hmm.
You have a son who is going off to professional football
Mm-hmm.
with the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl champions.
Like
How did that? He was a New Canaan football star. Tell me a little bit about that. And what was it like to raise a child that's going to the National Football League?
I will say that was despite his parents.
Oh, is that right?
Well, our background coming from France, for us, football was it's a full contact sport.
Yeah.
We have rugby, and with rugby, you'd never hit so hard because you don't have the padding, you don't have the full sense of security. With football, you have the helmet, the padding, and you feel like a superhero. So everybody goes at each other 100%. So when we moved to the US, we had our kids. After we had kids that were in age to participate in sports, we made sure they try every single sport but football.
Is that right?
And my son kept insisting, and he wanted to do tackle football. I was like, no, because my sons are big kids, and they have they used to be always off chart on size wise.
Mm-hmm.
So people will always see them as more mature than what they are, where the bone density was not there. So we had a fear of. They look ready, but they're not ready inside.
Okay.
So for the longest time, Lucas had to beg us to be able to participate in football. So we made a deal with him that in 4th grade, if he has good grades and everything is good, we will let him try.
That's a good deal.
And that's where it started.
Wow, that's exciting. Are you nervous
So-
for him right now in his next phase?
Less than when he started in 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
The sound of, for any mother, or any parents, I should say, fathers also, but the sound of the helmet-to-helmet contact, the first time when your son starts football, it's a sound that your heart cannot take it.
Sure.
And slowly you start to relax about it and try not to focus on it, because if you start focusing on the negative, guess what? The negative will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true in life, it's true in sport, it's true in everything. So we have, first of all, learned quickly the rules of football, because it's a lot of 4 hours sitting there. If you don't understand the game, it's very painful. So the first 3 years were very painful, but then it became such an interesting sport to us that now we are a football family. We watch the game, we roll for teams,
Sure.
we go buy flags, which
great.
I would have never believed I would end up doing. And so it's been very interesting. I'm very happy I could not have been prouder of him,
So
because
exciting.
his hard work did pay off. And coming from New Canaan and being a football player is not always perceived as a hardship. They assume that because he's coming from New Canaan, he's not as dedicated to the sport. Those were the comment we used to hear before the draft, where the passion that kid has for football, I have no idea where it's coming from, because I know it's not coming from me. So
Let's talk about a couple favorite things.
Mhm.
What's your favorite tradition in New Canaan? Christmas caroling?
the Christmas caroling
Yeah.
at God's Acre,
Mm-hmm.
hands down, will always be there with my family,
Mm-hmm.
with the candles, and yes, that's my
Beautiful.
favorite, one of my favorite traditions. And the straw also in
Mhm.
town. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about restaurants in New Canaan? Do you have a couple favorites?
Oh my, no, I can't pick one.
Okay.
For the simple reason that I love them all and I know them all,
Mhm.
and I don't want them to be mad at me if I choose one.
Mhm.
But I will say it's a matter of taste. If you want
Mhm.
something more on the New York style, you will pick Elm. If you
Mhm.
want something more on the family style, you will pick Roses, that is open for lunch,
Yes.
not for dinner. You have, if you are farm to table oriented, all of them actually are farm to table,
Mhm.
but you have the farmer's table. We somehow became foodie destination, because
That is so true.
our offering of restaurants are so broad, and they're all top notch. So
Yeah, they
you can't
really
go
are.
wrong. Yeah.
They really are.
Mm.
What
That's
are you
I do.
looking forward to?
This year, the list is too long. If someone had told me that 2020 would be a big pause in all our lives, when in January 1st we were all making our wishes, I would have not believed them. But the reality of it is here, and my biggest wish for all of us is to find a vaccine for this disease so we can come back to what we used to call normal life and at least have a sense of normalcy back, and the kids can go back to school and do what they do best. And that's my biggest wish for all of us. And for myself, let's keep the market going.
Yes, exactly.
At least for another year, but then I need a break.
Keep it going, absolutely.
Keep it going.
All right, my final question is, what would you tell yourself, your younger self, if you had somebody to come back in time and tell you what to look for, or maybe some advice?
My younger self would be more involved. I should have been involved sooner rather than later into women rights actions, into politics. Not to just be a representative or anything like that, but to understand it better, educate myself better. And I think that would be my first advice to myself, if I can. Because the more I read about the politics in the US, in France, in Europe, and the women's rights movement, and 1920 indeed is the ratification by the 36 states, but for African American, that was not giving us the right to vote. That was just giving women the right to vote. Maybe in Illinois, New York State, they were able to vote because those states had given them the right earlier. But in the rest of the country, African American had to deal with Jim Crow, in the South in particular, and a lot of the women association, suffrage association there were allowed to discriminate against African American. So those are the things I would have loved to learn more about, and I hope our generation in the school system in New Canaan will be more educated about all this history beyond just the slavery and the civil rights movement. There's so many things that happened before, between, and after, and the Voting Rights Act did not solve everything, secured the fact that we couldn't be discriminated against at this point, but when you look at what is going on today with voting rights and voting suppression and disenfranchisement of African American, or misinformation and targeting of African American on social media with false information to keep them out of voting, it's infuriating, and those are the things I would have loved to be involved with sooner rather than later. But as they say, never too late to do the right thing. So,
with that said, are you hopeful for the future? Do you think things will improve?
Yes, I am, because first of all, the new generation has been engaged more than ever. My son being the perfect example of a 17-year-old that is a level of maturity that the social media has a negative aspect, but a super positive aspect for those kids. It creates awareness for them very earlier than our generation could ever have. And I'm very hopeful for the fact that we are fighting for not America as it is today, but what America can become.
Sure. Because
the more we all get together, the better we can achieve that dream. And it will take Black, African American, Asian American, Indian American, white allies to all get together and realize that once you discriminate against one group, you are actually hurting yourself more than you're hurting that group. Mm-hmm. And even though African American, Brown, Latinx have getting the brunt of it, it will not work if you keep isolating. So let's get together and create a better America. I think that's what I'm hoping for, and I'm hopeful that will come.
Beautifully said. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What a wonderful way to end this great conversation. Fatou Niang, thank you so much for being a wonderful leader in our community, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you.